Alright. For some reason, and I do not know why, my laptop just started to shit itself the moment I pressed live. I don't know what it was. Why is there another ad play? God, fuck this. Fuck this. No! What? Another ad? I'll be right back. Is there even an app playing at the moment? Let me know, please, because I'm getting very conflicting results from Twitch. Gotta be honest. If you're on the YouTube side, you're probably just as confused as I am, because there's no ads on YouTube, at least not the ones that I put. Come on, like, why? I'll wait it out. You know what? No, fuck it. I'm not gonna wait it out. We're just gonna go start. I'm already running late. Might as well start. Alright, hi gang. Today, we got Scovillain in front of us. Scovillain X, absolutely terrible card in Standard. Like, I don't think I've ever seen this played other than in specifically a meme deck in Standard. Now you might ask, is it better in Expanded? Yes. Yes, it is better. I'm gonna show you today how. But do keep in mind, it's not meta warping. This is something that I wanna tell you guys. This is not a meta warping card. Please do not get your hopes up. This is not like some secret hidden tech. It's pretty decent from what I tested. It's pretty decent. Does it beat Regidrago? Probably not, unless they're Dialga's priced and they don't have Heavy Ball. Let's be honest with ourselves here. Like, this doesn't beat Regidrago. Like, point. Period. It just doesn't. And that's fine. This is able to swing from turn 2 going second. It's gonna be able to swing pretty consistently for about 290 damage. Maybe even 360 damage. And that's what I wanted to show you guys today. Not even to no, more than that, actually. Hello, Sam. Yeah, you were not schizo. You were not schizo. As I said a few minutes ago, for some reason my OBS wanted to disconnect from the internet the moment I clicked live. Instant ads, yeah, love it. Yay! You hate Switch. What? The ad break should be over, right? Or is it not over yet? It should be over soon. Yeah, see, there it is. The ad break is finishing now. Like, it just repeated the pre-roll, which is super, super annoying, but it is what it is. There we go. Exactly. There we go. As I was saying, I made a nifty Scovillain deck. Is it a good deck? I would say this is the best deck you can probably make, or very close to it, with Scovillain in Expanded. I would definitely say, Sam, that Frostlass Scovillain is way too slow in Expanded. This deck allows you to swing for like 290 damage, turn 2 going second, if not 360. 360 is optimal, 290 is expected. So it's not a Frostlass build. I'll explain to you guys what the combo is. But first, let's go through the numbers. Oh, that's lame? What do you mean that's lame? Scovillain Frostlass is the way to play Scovillain in Standard. And that's ass. It's slow. Frost Escape is like 2700 damage. You don't need that much damage, that's the thing. Like, yes, it's wonderful to hit that much, but you don't need that much to knock out any meaningful targets. So, let's talk about Scovillain. We're running 4 copies of Scovillain EX. Stage 1 fire type Pokemon, 260 HP. Has the ability Double Type, which gives it both grass and fire typing if it's in play. Which, like, hello, welcome in H-Mix. Why not Centiskorch X Scovillain? Centiskorch could be interesting with this. I chose to go a little bit of a different path to make it so that Spicy Rage, the attack you see on the bottom here, is about to hit as hard as you can possibly imagine. Potentially. Like, with just an easy, not even attachment for turn, you can hit like 290. Like I said, 360 with attachment. I'll get into how you can do that very easily. Don't worry. Scovillain his ass either way, may as well have fun. See, it's so hard to walk the fine line between fun and broken and expanded, because I feel like the two kind of go hand in hand. Because the most broken decks are also technically the most fun to play because they're broken. So I'm trying to find like a line of decks that are fun, but not necessarily broken. And I think this is one of them. So, Scovillain EX attacks... Wow. That's not English. Scovillain EX has an attack called Spicy Rage. For 2 fire energy, it does 10 damage, plus 70 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So, we want to load up this guy with damage. But what's the best way to do it? I'm going to tease you guys for a little bit, because the deck profile will not be complete without showing the basic Capsay kit, of course. Like, it has 70 HP, 1 retreat cost, so it's like kind of optimal for that. It searches your deck for a basic fire energy for 1 colorless if you need it to. You can attach it to this Pokemon immediately. You'd never use this attack. As you can see, I own 1 real Capsay kit, and these are 3 proxies. These are also proxies. Honestly, for these kind of videos, I really don't care about using proxies. Like, ideally, I use like the actual cards, of course. But proxies are just as fun. It's I'm here to appreciate the art as well, and we can do that with proxies. I would love to own the cards, but I'm not gonna spend like $40 on just like a one-off live stream, if you know what I mean. You know, Scovillain EX had like 1 result though. Oh yeah, the grass type Scovillain EX did have a result because it was played in a stall deck with Festival Grounds, I think. That was interesting. It was definitely an interesting Scovillain, but once again, a very different purpose. So, let me tell you guys the combo that we're gonna do here to get damage on the Scovillain. The combo is what we call Welder Cemetery. Some of you might have heard of it, some of you have not. We'll just do the cards one by one. Welder is a supporter card that allows you to attach up to 2 fire energy cards from your hand to one of your Pokemon and then draws you 3 cards. Incredibly good card. Immediately charges up the 2 fire energy for Spicy Rage, but if you have an Old Cemetery in play, which reads, whenever any player touches an energy from their hand to one of their non-Psychic type Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. That suddenly means that if you're playing Welder, you're also putting 40 damage on your Scovillain, which would translate to you hitting for 290 damage from this. It's Cemetery stack, just like Commander list you made. Yeah. It was an attempt to have a usable Pidgeot control list. Yeah, exactly. I would say Pidgeot control is a lot better now that we have LGM, but pre-LGM it was a little cursed in this block. Anyway, it's a Welder Cemetery combo. So you know what that means. We have 4 copies of Welder and 4 copies of Cemetery. It's like, I don't think this is a surprise. If this is the entire combo of the deck, we are running a 4-4 line of this combo. For some reason, these proxies specifically are like really misaligned. I don't know why. As you can see, I have basic energy cards behind the cards here, or behind the prints that I made for these proxies. Sometimes I just like to move around and jiggle, and you can actually see the cards behind them, which is not necessarily what we want. We want to pretend these are real, okay? They're not expensive cards necessarily. I mean, Welder is, but that's a different story. I own 1 Welder, okay? 1 Welder is enough. And with this in mind, with this combo in mind, we also gotta show the fire energy, of course. We are running 7 copies of fire energy. This might seem like very little energy. Trust me, this is all we need. This is all the fire energy we need. Let me just put the fire energy here. There we go. So our main way of searching the fire energy is going to be 4 copies of Fiery Flint. As you can see, Fiery Flint is an item card you can only play if you discard 2 other cards from your hand. You can search your deck for up to 4 fire energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. This is going to be our main way. And yes, we don't have 16 fire energy in the deck, but we just want as much redundancy as possible for Fiery Flint to find all the fire energy we need to get a turn 1 and turn 2 attack, if possible. And I'm saying turn 2 attack because, of course, you can't attack turn 1 if you're using Wally. Because if you're playing Wally, you're not playing Welder. Holy crayon eating deck. Yes, this is what we call a crayon eating deck. Every card you've seen so far that's not an energy is gonna be, it was a 4 copy. I'll show you the first card that's not a 4 copy, but there's a bunch of 4 copies in this list. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, exactly. Yeah, to be fair, these are like the main combo pieces, so it makes sense. We also run 3 Fire Crystal. And Fire Crystal recovers 3 fire energy cards from a discard pile into our hands. Yeah, I don't run 4. I could have ran 4 Fire Crystal, but I decided to cut the 4 Fire Crystal for another card that you will see later. Wow, imagine actually giving thought to actually putting thought into making a deck. That's crazy. Fire Crystal plus Fire Crystal kind of allows us to discard fire energy with Fiery Flint if we so desire, to find more fire energy, so that we can always have fire energy in our hand, even when it's discarded. You could for sure get away with 4-3. Scovillain. I mean, yes, but I went 4-4 with less recovery, specifically. Like, you can definitely go 4-3 if you tech in more recovery. I specifically went for a very low amount of recovery. But you can definitely go for like a 3-3 line or a 3-2 line or a 4-3 line with more recovery cards or something. I just wanted to make a big meatball go swing deck, okay? And that's what I did. Which, you're very right, you could definitely change that. Another card we have 4 copies of, because Welder is going to be the only supporter in our deck. Another card we have 4 copies of is a Random Receiver. Random Receiver reveals a card from the top of your deck until you reveal a supporter. Then you put that supporter into your hand and shuffle the other cards back into your deck. So this always will grab a Welder if you have a Welder in deck. Incredibly powerful item because it will always grab as Welder if we have one in deck. And if we don't even have a Random Receiver, we have a 5th Random Receiver, sort of. We also run 1 copy of Tapu Lele GX. Just to be able to turn all our ball search into a potential Welder. In case you don't know, Tapu Lele GX has the ability Wonder Tag, which allows us to, when we bench it from our hands, allows us to search our deck for a supporter and put it into our hand and shuffle our deck. The rest of the text on the card doesn't really matter. Like, yes, we could technically use Energy Drive to attack. We're probably not going to. That's fine. It's got to be Prime then. Who knows? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Alright. And on top of that, we also have 2 copies of Versus Seeker. Versus Seeker is an item card that allows you to put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. Of course, Versus Seeker is a staple card in every expanded deck, almost every expanded deck. We are only running 2 copies because I think 6 uses of Welder is probably enough to win the game. I'm not lying. I'm just not giving you the information. Alright, so let's talk about the rest of the draw engine, because Welder is technically kind of a draw engine, but not really. It just draws free cards. You're mostly playing it for the attachments. It's nice that it draws cards, but it's not the main function of the card. Countercatcher is tough. So, the draw engine that we run is Jirachi Escape Boards. We run 2 copies of both of them. The Jirachi has the ability Stellar Wish, which allows it to, if it's in the active spot, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal a trainer card you find there, and put it into your hand. But Jirachi becomes asleep. Jirachi turns asleep. Goes to Sleep, but we have a Skateboard to combo with that. Skateboard says the retreat cost of this Pokemon the Pokemon this card is attached to is 1 energy less, and it can retreat even if it's asleep or paralyzed. So that means with the 1 retreat cost that Jirachi has, we can use Stellar Wish, put it to sleep, and then retreat into another Jirachi, because we can with a Skateboard. Do the same thing. Like, yes, we can't retreat 2 times per turn, but that's fine. This is mostly for the early game setup that we have going on here. Roast reveals Salazzle. I think it would be falls asleep. Yeah, goes to sleep, falls asleep, turns to sleep. Yeah, falls asleep is probably the best wording for this. Yeah. So 2 copies of Jirachi, team up, 2 copies of a Skateboard, and we have some other big meatballs that can draw us cards, of course. We have 2 copies of Dene GX. I don't think this is a surprise in this deck specifically. The Dene GX with the ability Dene Change. When we play this Pokemon from our hand onto the bench, we get to discard our hand and draw 6 cards, but we can't use more than 1 Dene Change every turn. And then we also have 1 copy of Crobat V, which has a similar ability, but allows us to draw until we have 6 cards in our hands. I don't think, once again, these cards are very weird to include in this list. If you think they're weird, you're weird. This looks suspiciously like a deck I would make. Yeah. And that's not like a bad sign, is it? Okay, for our ball search we have 4 Quick Ball. Quick Ball is a card that allows us to discard a card from our hand to search our deck for a basic Pokemon and put it into our hand. It's like Nest Ball, but we don't put it on the bench immediately, but we have to discard a card before we play it. Especially very useful to grab a Crobat or the Dene out of our deck, or, like I said, a Tapu Lele. And then for some more Ball Search, we have 4 copies of Ultra Ball. I think I don't have to explain this card to anyone, but you discard 2 other cards from your hand and you get to search your deck for a Pokemon. Especially since you said you have no recovery, it looks like a deck. Well, I don't have no recovery. I have very little recovery. Alright. The 4 counts are not done yet, because this deck also has 4 copies of Trainer's Mail, of course. So effectively our deck has 56 cards. Trainer's Mail is an item card that allows us to look at the top 4 cards of our deck. So choose a trainer card we find there, put that card into our hand, and shuffle the others back into our deck. So this will almost always just straight up give us a card from the top of our deck we need. And like I said, this basically means our deck is 56 cards instead of 60. Alright, we're starting to get into one-off territory. For the avid counters out here, these are 56 out of the 60 cards. I think I'm known for running one Night Striker and calling it a day. There's 4 more cards here, and they're all single copies, but they're all incredibly important for the deck to function. Why is this light so... Yeah, there we go. That's better. We run 1 copy of Forest Sealstone. This is our only use of V-Star power in the deck. Allows us to search our deck for a card with Star Alchemy, but of course only once per turn, and this is to attach to the Crobat V. It's the only V Pokemon we have, but surely it will work out. Surely. I'm gonna make a little bit more room for other things, so that we have the room to display it. Let's see. Quick Ball, Trainer's Mail, or Sealstone. Manaphy could be good for early game. Yeah, for sure. Manaphy could be interesting for sure. I don't think it will save us that much in the Regidrago matchup. Because in the Regidrago matchup, I feel like we're just gonna get Timeless GX'd into like a huge Dragapult attack. Most likely because we have so many 2-prizers that have less than 200 HP. Especially since Muscle Band Timeless GX just knocks out the Dene GX. I think that's the most important problem here. I consider the Transformative Start seems pretty solid. I mean, we could, for sure. Another alternative attacker. I said another. This is the first alternative attacker you're seeing, but also the last. It's Radiant Charizard. Radiant Charizard allows us to, in late game, swing for big damage as well. but only in late game because this Pokemon stack is very expensive and costs less based on how many prize cards our opponents have taken. If you're familiar with Blood Moon Ursaluna EX, this card is probably better than Blood Moon Ursaluna, actually. But we can only run one copy of this in our deck. Get you an extra out for Jirachi or Caps. Yeah. You're not wrong. It's definitely interesting. I just don't think I have the room for it in the list because I can't think of any other card I would like to cut for that. Then, our only recovery card in the deck is one copy of Rescue Stretcher, which puts a Pokemon from our discard pile into our hand, or shuffles 3 Pokemon from our discard pile into our deck. Yeah, and like I said, this is our only recovery option. Technically, Fire Crystal is a recovery card, but it's mostly for trying to chain more Scovillans. Whereas this is also that case, but this is our only Pokemon recovery card. No Baby Blue Cephalon? No. Charizard is really good, yeah, it's an insane card. To counter Timeless, you saw some players played 2 Manaphy. Interesting. The thing is, if you're not playing against Regidrago, Manaphy is like an awful start. So, yeah. That's the thing. Alright, and the last card in the deck is one copy of Prime Catcher. You were right, Sam. You were right, you saw through me. This is a Guzma on an item card, but it's our ace spec, so we can only put one of them into the deck. Hello, Strategic, welcome in. There we go. This is the entire 60 card list of our cooking Scovillain EX. Not, I would say, I'm definitely made this deck as a Beatstick deck and an Unga Bunga deck. Guzama! If you're playing against Drago with something like this, you just scoop go next. Oh yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like I said, this deck is not intended to beat meta decks. It's just intended to swing funny. And I'm pretty sure, besides like the random receivers and the VS Seekers, this deck is like entirely legal for Expanded Beta. If you're planning on playing it on TCG Live. Literally the 4 random receivers and the 2 Versus Seekers are the only cards that are not in Gen 7 or upwards. So you can consider that. Sure. No, shit was gonna be Prime, you had no other cost options. Shut up. I have 4 of those Fiery Flint League promos IRL. Oh, sick. Let's go. I sadly only have 1, and this is the only Fiery Flint I actually own. Shit, I better copy paste the list then. The list is in the YouTube description if you're wondering, but you can also take a screenshot now. I'll hide chat for a quick second so you can take a clean screenshot. There you go. I'm gonna give you 5 seconds. I could play the Gust Ninetales, potentially. I saw some players play a Jinx. Transfers damage counters between your mods. Yeah, I was thinking about maybe including Damage Bump or something like that, but once again, I couldn't really find a room. Because I mostly for this list aim to go for consistency. That's like the most important part for me, the consistency. And like, yes, damage bumps help with setting up certain bigger KOs, but usually 290 is enough to hit most of the meta for one shot, most of the meta. And 290 is what you hit after just doing one welder onto your Scovillain. So I figured it wasn't really necessary at that point. Someone wanted you to play Scovillain, well here you go. You can copy the list almost card for card. The thing is, random receiver is kind of integral to how this deck functions, so you definitely want to add probably a few more draw supporters like research or whatever, maybe a little bit more recovery. You definitely want to Palpad in this list over the Versus Seekers though, because you definitely want to welder more than 4 times per game in some games. Scovillain players hate to see Ozelf coming. Dude, shut up. Ozelf is not a real card. It's not a real card. And Guzma if you're not running random. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, Guzma Counter Catcher are great cards to add. Or maybe Cross Switcher. No, Cross Switcher is probably a little ass. But that's okay. Surely you want to play Calamitous Snowy Mountains as a stadiums because SRC? Well, the thing is, Calamitous Snowy Mountain only works on basic Pokemon. It works on basic non-water type Pokemon. Whereas Old Cemetery works on all non-psychic Pokemon. So it also works on evolutions. So, guess you could consider playing it with Snowy Mountain, but then you're kind of like hamstrung on using Welder before you evolve into Scovillain, which is kind of like the downside. And no, don't worry, I know the cards are very similar. I know they also play Potown. What does Potown do again? I kind of forgot. Like I remember the cards, but I don't remember what it does. Evolve 2 damage counters on Evolved Mon. You could, but then you're only hitting for like 150 after evolving and then not using Old Cemetery to do damage. It's an interesting thought, but I think the math just barely doesn't work out. Like if Scovillain was a stage 2 Pokemon, then yes, it would have checked out more. But wait, oh shit! Strategic is saying wait. That's not a great sign. Damn, I was gonna go check a card, but by the time you opened Limitless, you forgot. I'm not playing Radiant Heatran. No, I'm playing Radiant Charizard, actually. Because Radiant Heatran's attack cost is 3 energy. And this is most likely energy cost of 1. That's the main reason. I did consider Radiant Heatran. I was like, man, it's really hard to charge this up. It's definitely interesting. I do play Welder. Yeah, you're right. But the reason for that mostly is I think I want to swing in late game when I don't have access to Welder, and that's where Charizard comes in. That's like kind of the purpose of Charizard. I could have done like Baby Blacephalon for a similar case, but I feel like Charizard just fills that role the best. Attacking on a non-Welder turn, a turn where we fail to find Welder in late game. His deck does go Burr. It's so hyper aggressive. It's so hyper aggressive, but I am here for it. I am here for it. Let's shuffle up this pile and see how consistent it actually is. Let me also grab my V-Star marker. We won't need a GX marker. I mean, I do have the Dene GX and Tapu Lele GX in the deck, but no lightning or psychic energies to actually use those attacks. But yeah. Let's see. I feel like I missed a message somewhere, probably. I think I read most of them. So if you did type a message and I didn't read it, please just repeat it. Please feel free to repeat messages that I have not read. At least not read aloud. I might have read your message in my head, but then you wouldn't know, of course. Scovillain hates to see Celebrations Lunala coming. Oh shit, that card does exist, you're right. Nobody plays it, luckily. But that card does exist. Dude. You know what card Scovillain does hate to see coming? Mega Absol. Because if you do like Welder plus attachment to do 60 damage to your Scovillain, you're basically setting up opponent's Mega Absol to just one-shot you. Which is really funny. Yeah, that's your Scovillain tech? That's crazy. That's crazy. Sable IV looks at Scovillain EX proudly. Yeah. Man, I remember Sable IV. Those were good old times. It's just budget Mega Titar, it is. But Sable IV is a basic, and Mega Titar is like technically a stage 1 that you need a Spirit Link for or to skip a turn, so it's, yeah. With respect on Mega Titar's name, no, Sable IV is better, bro. I would honestly say that Mega Titar is a budget Sable IV. In my opinion. But that's just my humble opinion. I'm just a simple country spider farmer. Alright, I think I'm shuffled up well enough. This deck probably always wants to go first, because you want to be able to swing turn 2 most efficiently. And that means you want to do your turn 2 the fastest. Let's see. Mega Titar has a Mega Double the Spirit Link. I ain't even that bad. Yeah, I mean... Yeah. Yeah. I don't buy it. I'm sorry, man. I don't buy it. Alright, let's just flip a coin to see if we're first or second. Let's say heads is first, tails is second. That's not a good roll. That's heads. So let's go first in this game. Heavy baton, energy recovery. I mean, that's definitely an idea for sure. I'm forced to start Crobats. That's a little awkward, if I say so myself. As I said, put respect on Mega Titar's name. No. No, I don't think I will. No, I don't think I will. God, I love that meme. It's so good. Alright, that's 6 cards in the prizes, and let's start our turn 1 by drawing a card. Okay, so I definitely want to play this random receiver first. So we can thin out the welder, guaranteed. Let's see what we find. It's the second card, that's crazy. That's actually so lucky. We found welder on the second card from random receiver. That's so funny. So we got our 2 welders. I'm tempted to go for a Jirachi play here potentially, but that means that we probably don't set up any Capsaicids. I can definitely quick ball a welder here to grab Capsaicids. Sure. I don't want to go too hard on this first turn because there's a lot of good resources in my hand here. Let's think. Do we just quick ball the Prime Catcher away? I think we do here. Yeah, I think we do. To grab the Jirachi. I should probably actually price check to see what's in prizes. 2 out of the 7 fire energies are in prizes. And so is 1 of the Jirachis. Okay. Technically speaking, random receiver could be an insane deck check card. Draw through most of your deck and check what's there before you grab your supporter. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, it would kind of suck in this exact instance where you find welder second. But if you have no other search in your hand, then yes, definitely pay off. Like, I would have loved to quick ball for Crobat here, but Crobat's already like the 4th start, so this opener is a little bit cursed. So let's look for the last Jirachi that's left. Yeah. There we go. Oh, Noah's gonna be shocked when I pull Mega Titar on him this weekend. Would be very funny. Would be very funny. By the way, Commander, if you're interested in joining the weekly stream match, it's gonna be on Sunday this week, 7 PM Central European Time. It's gonna be on Sunday this week rather than Saturday because I want to do the December cook-off. I want to do Chef Husky's December cook-off on Saturday. That's why it's gonna be skill copy. No. Thanks Noah for helping out with the project yesterday. Oh yeah. Yeah, I definitely didn't have that time today, but I'll have more time tomorrow to help on the Omega Secret project. Don't worry. All right. The other escape board was not priced, so it feels a little awkward to do escape board to Crobat here, but I think we have to. And then do Stellar Wish to look at the top 5 cards of our deck and grab. These are 6 cards, my bad. Grab a trainer card we find here. What trainer card would be best here? We still have not found a single fire energy here, which is really awkward. Ultra Ball is also like unplayable with this hand, so yeah, this is kind of awkward. I'll grab the Fire Crystal. Actually, no, I think it's better to still grab Ultra Ball here. Jirachi's put to sleep. Just because we get top deck and most likely another Jirachi proc next turn, and maybe that'll allow us to play the Ultra Ball. Skill Copy is the only real way to play a Mega Pokemon. Yeah, true. There is a great attack, the energy cost is just bonkers. Yeah, you're right. We're doing other videos today, so you haven't had time to add those cards. That's okay. Don't worry. Like you said, we're not in a hurry. We're not in a hurry whatsoever. But if we just move on like a semi-crisp pace, then that's fine. All right, I think it's time to pass the turn. This is a really awkward start, but let's flip for sleep. And we do wake up, and it's our opponent's turn. Let's say our opponent does not have a turn 1 going second attack. We draw into Fiery Flint. That's a really good draw. This is an incredibly good draw. Let's use Stellar Wish once again. This is the downside of attaching a skateboard here. We can't use the Force Seal Stone anymore, unfortunately. This turn, Timeless Jackson Phantom Dive Key. Technically, if the Regidrago build has Wally, that was possible here. Technically. I think I'll grab Trainer's Mill here because we need something at this point. We need something at this point. It's very awkward. I honestly don't really mind if Jirachi goes down. What Regi builds don't play Wally? Most of them don't. What do you mean, what Regi build doesn't play Wally? Like, at least 80% of them do? No! No, they don't. No. Absolutely not. What are you talking about? Since when? Since, like half a year ago? Like, most of them, like, either don't play one or play one maximum. Most of them. So, yeah. Okay, bro, that's, like, recent? Yes, it is recent. You're right. You don't follow Expanded. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Old Cemetery is interesting here to grab. Definitely want that. So we can put that in play. Guess we have to Fiery Flint away the Ultra Ball and VS Seeker here. Grab our 4 fire energy. 2, 3, 4. This is 4 out of our 5 fire energy in the deck currently, so all our other Fiery Flints won't be as impactful. This is a very awkward start. This is not what I envisioned at all. Like, none of my test games went like this, like, at all. Which is, like, nutty. Make sure to stay hydrated. That's a good call. Make sure to stay hydrated. I'm gonna do that right now. We haven't had an expanded regional in 6 years. Only Japanese people or people that play the format follow meta developments. Yeah. Yeah, true. True. Alright, let's play Welder to attach these 2 fire energies to Capsakit. Takes 4 damage in the process, and I draw 3 cards. Draw into another Welder and another Capsakit. Maybe let's wait with benching that until we see what we get off the Trainer's Mill, shall we? Oh, we get a skateboard. That's interesting, but I don't have an out to Scovillain, and if I grab Ultra Ball, I do. So we're grabbing Ultra Ball. I do have all my fire crystals, so I can definitely bump these 2 fire energies to go search for Scovillain. Because we don't want to leave a Capsakit with 30 HP remaining on the bench, ideally. You play a little Expanded in person with friends, there's a community for it. Yeah, I do too. Not with, like, IRL friends, but with some online friends. You have a rough knowledge, aka Drago top tier, tier 0, Lugia tier 1, and then everyone else tier 2 or lower. That's partially true, I would say. I would definitely say that Iron Thorn ZX is also a tier 1 deck. And I would definitely call Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX also a tier 1 deck. And I would definitely call Regidrago a tier -1 deck. Tier S or whatever. It's definitely like at least 2 tiers above the others. There's a community, but there isn't established metagame in the West. Yeah, correct. Alright. Boom. Evolution. bench the other Capsay Kid, and of course, Jirachi's still EP, so we can't attack this turn. So let's end our turn and flip for sleep. I did flip heads again, but I feel like Jirachi's gonna eat some ass here and die. So that means our opponent is on 5. We push Crobat because it has 3 retreats, and we draw for turn. So how many welders am I down? I'm down 2 welders already and a VS Seeker. But if I don't quick ball for a Dedenne here, I think I'm just straight up not doing anything this turn other than swinging. And I do think I need to develop a little more, so let's say quick ball for Dedenne. It's kind of irrelevant. Let's see. You'd say Thorns and Shadow are tier 1. 1.5. Lugia for sure better than them. No, definitely not. No. Like, Lugia is good, but I would definitely call Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX like as good as Lugia, and Iron Thorn GX potentially better than Lugia. Like, not gonna lie. Draco being -1 isn't even that crazy. Yeah. I have a girlfriend. Guess what nation she is from? Uncommon. Sorry. She's from Uncommon. Sorry, this is such a bad inside joke. This is such a bad inside joke. It's not even funny at this point. Your imagination. Okay. I knew it. Alright. Let's bench the Dedenne and trigger Dedenne change. Draw 6 cards. Oh look, I grabbed exactly 6 cards. So we found another old... We found the other 3 old cemeteries from our deck. Awesome. We do also find Fire Flint and Fire Crystal, but Fire Flint will not grab any cards from our deck right now. But what I can do is attach the Fire Energy here manually for turn to do 2 damage here. And we can retreat into the Scovillain to swing for 290 damage. Let's assume it takes 2 prizes, because the average V-star dies from that. Such a good inside joke. Yeah, thank you. Christ, no girlfriend. Aww. Okay, so we found the other Jirachi and a basic Fire Energy. Now, do we presume that this Scovillain also perishes? I'm assuming. What is this? Every woman that goes to my college is a hoe, so I don't even want a GF here. I mean, womp womp, Automat is trash. I do not like that use of language, so I will deny that message actually from Automat. I might, let's uplift women, okay? Let's uplift women in this space rather than talk down on them, okay? Let's uplift women and other people rather than talk down to other people. I mean, what else am I supposed to say? That the women that walk around at your campus are not your type. That's what you can say as well. That you would rather wait for a partner rather than seek validation from partners. That's something you could say. You could like not use the word sleep around or hoe. 100%. And I don't blame you for it. It's very ingrained in our society to use this language, but I just want to like nip it in the bud if possible. Let's bench a Jirachi. They sleep with everyone is like a textbook definition, yes. But if someone is black, he's per definition an N-word. So do we call him that? Like that's kind of where my point is. Like it's not to the same degree, of course, but it's more like why should we use derogatory language for this specific type of human? Like why? That's no, you're good. Like as in like just like watch out next time, okay? Oh wait, by the way, hold on. I need to do something. First and foremost, we were talking about between turns. Between turns, Scovillain definitely fucking dies. That's 100% happening. Like, there's no way that's not happening. You didn't know what else to say? That was the least offensive term? That was the least one, okay. No, you're... okay. Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, draw for turn. Great, we found the most useless card from our deck. Awesome. Yeah, this is really awkward. Like, it doesn't really matter if Old Cemetery's bumped, because we have 3 others in our hands. Yeah, I think this is just gonna be straight up a loss. Okay, so, chat, you might hate me for this, but what I will do is I'll play the out. I'll play the out. It is very unlikely that this out is about to happen, but I'll play to the out, and we'll just, like I said, this is a hypothetical scenario. So, yeah, we'll just play until the out. It's not gonna happen, of course, in any real game, but if it happens, like, I would always say play to your outs, however unlikely they are. That feeling when you have 4 stadiums in hand, yeah, I know, right? So we retreat into Jirachi. And we hope find anything. I mean, there's escape boards. I think we want to grab random receiver for Welder here. We have to. That's like the thing. We have to find more cards than just escape boards. So this is the out we're playing. Random receiver finds us. There's the Welder. Gotcha. Alright. Gonna shuffle again. God, I love Eternal Force music so much. It's so good. Holy shit. Alright. We got the Welder. And we're gonna play Fire Crystal to recover some fire energies to our hands. 1, 2, 3. You actually played some standard this morning and you had a great game where your starting hand was all of your area zeros and an energy with Baby Koraidon. Very fun. You've been single for your entire life. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. You'll find someone eventually. I don't understand why people are always, or like most people are always such in a hurry to find like the love of their life. Like that shit doesn't happen fast usually, I would say. Yeah, so we do have to welder to something, unfortunately. Let's attach up to 2, so I will just attach 1 to the Dene GX. So it takes 20, and we draw 3 cards. Draw Capsakit, Scovillain, and the Dene. Okay. This is technically workable. Technically, I'm saying. Technically workable, because what we can do is the Dene here. Bam. And just discard all of this. Then we need escape boards off of here, which we don't get. Okay, great. We don't get escape boards, Sag. Yeah, so I think we just lose here, question mark? Like, this is the out that I was going for. Finding escape board off of here. And we didn't. So that sucks. Or did I discard the other escape boards, potentially? I don't think I did, right? Or was the other escape board prize? Was that it? I'm not entirely sure. Let's take a look. No, it wasn't a prize, see? It was a valid out to go for. It was a valid out to go for, and we didn't hit it. That's okay, though. Let's see, because the societal norms promote having a sexual partner at a young age. Yeah, but what if I say fuck the societal norms? No. I'm above them. Nah, I'm built different. It's mainly because... Ooh! It's mainly because everybody else has found their someone, and I see everyone at uni having fun, and you didn't go uni, so yeah. Well, you're not entirely wrong, but it's mainly that everybody else has found a someone. You don't know if it's their someone. Like, 1 in 3 people divorce. 1 in 3 married people divorce. So, like, I am built different, actually. I'm stupid. Yeah, that's valid. I did not intend to have such a deep talk about this, but there's really no need to tie your self-worth to having a romantic or sexual partner at all. like what good comes from that? Because once you finally do have one, you're gonna tie like your entire self-worth to that person, which is, I'm assuming internal validation is like the preferred way to get enjoyment out of life rather than external validation. I think that kind of ties in. Anyway, we're kind of cooked with this hand. Like, this Jirachi is asleep and active, and we don't have the second escape board. I want to bet like $5 that this is like escape board. Okay, it's not. How deep in the deck was the escape board? It was here. It was like somewhere in the middle. Okay, it was not very likely 2 hits, but at least we tried, and that's the most important part. But for sure, this game had like the worst opener ever, and we still somewhat got into the game. So, you know, it's definitely not like the deck's fault. It's just that we severely bricked by opening Crobat, having to attach an escape board to it turn 1. My country is so cooked, the divorce rate is actually almost 50%. That's crazy. Holy shit. Yeah, the statistic here is like 30 to 35%, so it's still fucked. But yeah. Yeah, fuck it, I'm still young, you still got your own shit to do. Hell yeah! Exactly. Enjoy being single for now. Dude, being with someone, it takes so much of your time away. Like, yes, it's fun, but you have so much less free time for yourself. It's crazy. United States moment. Yeah, no. What Sam means is that in the US, the divorce rate is 50%. That's why he's calling it a United States moment. That's actually so fucked, though. But yeah, strategic is not US. Strategic is UK. Women here suck. I miss AU. Aww. Hey. Not all women, right? Not all women suck. We keep saying not all men, but we also have to say not all women. That's the... Dude, I don't know. Why is it today of all days that I'm like giga tired that we're talking about all these things? You started all the shit. No, you're good. You're good. You never could have expected to start all this. I don't think you ever expected me to have such a strong opinion on this. So, yeah, you miss Wii Sports. That's a great segue into other talks. I miss the Wii in general, man. The Wii was so cool. All right, let's just flip this coin or die. Okay, so it's heads. Let's go first again this game. There's nothing notable in the deck that didn't need to get talked over in the deck preview. That's fair. Take me back to 2006 to 2016. Yes. What is this opening hand? Why am I starting with all this garbage? Where are my Capsakins and my Jirachis? Those are 6 out of like the 11 basics. Why are they not here? You miss Steve Irwin, the GOAT. I do too. I mean, Robert is doing a great job. But I agree, I think I miss Steve as well. I guess starting Lele is not as terrible as starting Crobat. Because that still means we have a 4 Sealstone targets. But starting Zard is actually like so horrendous. Today we answered the age-old question. If Beethoven was deaf, how could he see his piano? Yes. Exactly. Okay, let's draw for turn. Find Scovillain. That's a card in my deck, I guess. I mean, this is gotta happen, probably. I'm not entirely sure on that yet. I want to be able to play the Crobat down this turn, potentially. That's probably gonna be very difficult, but I think the way to do it is just to play the old cemetery. And then quick ball away the Radiant Charizards, I think. We have Rescue Stretcher, we're fine. How much cologne is too much cologne? I prefer 1 bottle a day, but it's up to you. My question is, if I'm a dumbass, how does Noah still lose to me in Pokémon? Hey, I'm just saying, dumbasses can still, dumbasses can still, like, pilot Oonga Boonga decks. If that makes sense. 3 Quick Ball are priced, so this is the last Quick Ball I'm playing. This is the last Quick Ball I'm playing. The other 3 are just in my prizes. And so is Prime Catcher and Forest Seal Stone. That's crazy. My deck isn't Oonga Boonga. It is! You just swing with Greninja or Palkia or Terapagos and call it a day. It's pretty much Oonga Boonga. Alright, what are we grabbing off of this Quick Ball? Probably a Capsakid, if I'm gonna be honest. But I could justify a Jirachi as well. But I'm tempted to just grab this. Yeah. Let's just grab this for now. We don't have any other Quick Balls, so that's why I'm tempted to just grab this Capsakid rather than a Jirachi. I mean, we still have 4 Ultra Ball, but still. With Palkia or Terapagos or Greninja or Suicune or Budew or Hoothoot or any other of your other 30 attackers. God damn it. Still haven't scheduled the video. Gotta finish it off tomorrow, got a bit of time. Yeah, no, don't worry. You're good to go. You don't need my validation to schedule videos, right? If you're just telling me that, okay, yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe I just read it as if you were looking for validation. You're just saying, okay, cool. I think I just read it in a way that was like, yo, can I just run this by you real quick that I'm only scheduling tomorrow and not today? And I think you can even make like a true Oonga Boonga commander deck. Surely you can. Surely you can. I just don't think it has been done yet, but I think surely you can make an Oonga Boonga commander deck. Jeez. Now I have to reshuffle because I just yeeted some cards off the top of my deck. Lovely. Lovely. Tuesdays are like this day, like the day I schedule your first video for the week, which is usually the same day that I stream. Yeah, okay, you're valid. That makes sense. That makes sense. That does make sense. Sure, you can make a basic deck like Cerulege, but there's still too much deck space and not enough consistency or similar attackers to remove strategy. Yeah, true. Wow, guys, I'm valid. Yeah, of course you are. Of course you're valid. I really don't want to burn this escape board, so I think I'm just gonna Crobat for Tree here. Crobatting for Tree feels so bad. But I think I have to do it. I got have 1 fire energy. Let's play Trainer's Mail. See what our options are. Welder is nice. I have Scovillain in the hand already and 1 fire energy, but I also have Fiery Flint. So yeah, let's grab Welder for next turn. That's awesome. Seconds ago you were invalid. What? You're just messing with me. Oonga Boonga is Turbo Moon. I guess so. I think like a real Oonga Boonga deck is Solitaire, where what your opponent is doing basically irrelevant to you. So, like, your version of Unknown Hands was Oonga Boonga, in your opinion. Your version of Unknown Hands with the E-Search Pro. That was Oonga Boonga. Right, grabbing Welder off of the Trainer's Mail. I can manually attach this turn, but I don't think I will want to. I think I just want to... Whoops. I think I just want to wait. And pass. So, do we think they knock us out turn 1 going second on a Lele? Like, let's assume that they don't. That makes this play more interesting, I think. That's control, it's different. In an attacking contest text. Okay, I got you. I see where you're going. Okay, let's first play... No, hold on. We have Fire Crystals. We should first play Fiery Flint, discarding the 2 fire energy and grabbing 4 more. That's what we should do first. But almost all the fire energy is out of the deck. Not Cobra was definitely a negative skill deck. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It was definitely a negative. All you had to do was count to 35 on your turn. Yeah. I was about to say, like, how do you call that deck, like, hard to play? That was objectively broken. Also, there's gonna be an ad playing in 40. Hold on. No. We're gonna snooze this ad. We're gonna snooze this ad. I don't want this ad right now. We're in the middle of the game. All right. Let's evolve into Scovillain EX and play the Welder, attaching to getting 40 damage. Drawing 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we found second escape board. That's big. I can also just manually attach here. Especially since we just found 2 fire crystals. Manually attach and retreat. It's probably the best play we can do. And I definitely do want to Ultra Ball here at some point. I think it's better if I do it now, using the Fire Crystal to get some hand size back. Yeah. And then let's use Ultra Ball, discarding 2 of these to grab another Capsay Kit. I mean, we have Jirachi, or like we have double. I mean, yes, we have double escape board in hand, but we don't have a backup Capsay Kit yet, so we have to. Guys, what's 9 times 4? That's literally that deck, yeah. You say Unknown Missing is fairly crayon eating as well. Yeah. You at least have to think what the best way of recovering your Girafarig is, I guess. Right? I think that's like mostly part of it. All right. There's 2 fire energy in discards and 1 fire crystal. Yeah. We still have 2 crystals left. All right. Let's swing for, let's say, 2 prizes. I think that makes sense. There's a Quick Ball and an Old Cemetery. It's kind of big. Let's assume we get bumped and knocked out. That's like worst case scenario, I guess. Do we push Capsay Kit in that sense? I think we do. And draw for turn. Definitely evolve to Scovillain. Old Cemetery. Actually, not sure about this one. Let me take that back. Literally ignore your opponents entirely and scoop if you whiff. Yeah. Unknown damage is true, Unga Boonga, indeed. I would agree with that. Alright, so what do we Quick Ball for here? Another Capsay Kit? Thing is, I need draw. So I think I do Quick Ball for a Jirachi. And just take an off turn for now. Our opponent's at 4 poises, by the way. Alright. So let's attach for turn. Taking 20 and retreat. Actually, no, we're not doing that. I'm gonna burn one of my escape boards on this, pushing the Jirachi and then putting this here. And I think I will still attach for turn after I check what I get off of Stellar Wish. Oh, look, there's Welder. That's awesome. I do want Welder. Or do I want VS? I want VS Seeker more than I want Welder. Because there's still random receivers in my deck. So. I do think I want to Welder this turn. If possible. Let's VS Seeker for the Welder. Here we go. Then we Fire Crystal. Sorry for that. Camera bump. I would honestly say that this deck is also pretty Oonga Boonga. And then we welder to attach 2 here, putting 40 here, and drawing 1, 2, 3 cards. Once again, there's a random receiver, so we can look for a welder. What the fuck? 2 random receivers are the first 2 cards after random receiver. That's crazy. And there's the third one. There we go. There's the welder. Right, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Man, I hate shuffling so much. So annoying. You know how you said you missed Wii Sports? Yeah. I remember that from 10 minutes ago. You just realized you have a Wii plugged in on your desk. Oh shit! Let's go. Hell yeah. Alright. And I have to pass here. And let's flip for sleep. Tails. But I'm assuming at this point in time, my opponent is probably gusting my Lele and grabbing a fat juicy KO on that. So, let's push Jirachi and draw. Skateboards. I don't think Fiery Flint's gonna draw any energies for me, right? Let me just check. There's 4 that I'm seeing here. And there's 2 in this card, so it can grab 1. Fiery Flint can grab 1 energy for me. I think I found a decent card for a Drago matchup. Gotta go check supporting pieces. Oh! What card did you find? I'm very curious. Like, even if this got bumped, by the way, we still have another, so... But the thing is, I don't really want to welder here, if I can help it. Random receiver, VS Seeker, Trainer's Mail. I will have to grab the Trainer's Mail because I don't need another welder because I have one in hand already. Ultra Prism Bastiodon has a pretty solid ability for the matchup. What is the ability on the Bastiodon? I mean, the thing is, it's a fossil Pokemon, so getting it in play, you either need like the Research Lab thing. You probably need Research Lab because otherwise Regidrago is just gonna keep item locking you with Noivern GX. Prevents damage done to all metal Pokemon by opponents with metal energy. Oh, that's interesting. Like all damage done in general? Or also effective attacks? Or with special energy? Not metal. Is it prevents all damage, or is it prevents damage by attacks and not effective attacks? Let's look at what Trainer's Mail has to offer for us. I think it has to be an Ultra Ball angle here. Let's see. Why am I shuffling? I want to play this Ultra Ball. Let's play the Ultra Ball. Discarding Fiery Flint and Scovillain. Probably fine to discard Welder in this scenario. Unsure. How many outs do I have to Welder? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, let's not do that then. Fire energy then. Only damage, unfortunately, but if you put something that's immune to effects out front. Yeah, but the most important effects that you want to block are the Phantom Dives. Like the Phantom Dive damage. That's like the most relevant one for sure. Do I grab Capsakit or do I grab the Dene here? I think I grab Capsakit. I don't want to the Dene. Alright. It's not necessarily the active that needs to be protected from effects, it's the bench. Alright, so let's evolve the Scovillain, play Welder for 1, and draw 3. find another old cemetery. That's a good-ass Dedenne, though. That's a really good Dedenne. Jirachi is asleep, by the way. 4, 5, 6. I just benched this Capsakid. What am I doing? I just benched this Capsakid. I'm not allowed to evolve that. What am I doing? Definitely play the random receiver to thin out another welder. Where is the last welder in my deck? There it is. I think that's the last welder in my deck. No, there's still one more. Okay. I'm gonna stop the video edits for today and get it done tomorrow. Hell yeah. Self-care is sexy. Alright, is there anything else that I want to do this turn specifically? The thing is, I retreated this turn already. Did I? No, I didn't. I pushed this. So I can retreat into... This actually should have been a Radzard turn, but I think Radzard is in discard, and I didn't find Rescue Stretcher at all. Or like any outs. I'm pretty sure Radzard is like in discard, right? Yeah. First card in discard. So we just have to swing and then hope our opponent can't KO us. It's kind of the clue of the story. But our opponent probably KOs us. But what if they can't KO to 20 damage? What if they can only do like 100 and they boss up like this Jirachi or something? Kill that. Then we push this and then swing for them. Yeah. Not interesting gameplay. Go next. Go next. That pricing was very cursed. But at least that was like a somewhat decent game. FX can get blocked by Magearna EX fairly easily. What does that card say? What does that card say? Does it have a cool ability that does that? Or... Oh, yeah, the ad break is starting now. That was very well timed. Oh my god. Awesome. I'm just gonna go shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Metal energy attached. Are immune from effects. Mega Audino plated to worlds. Yeah, actually? Yeah. The unfortunate part is that Regidrago still can, like, one-shot these Pokemon with, like, you know, actual attacks like Riono Glide. Or whatever Salamence EX's attack is called. That's the sad part. So yes, they can't damage spread you, but they can still Trifrost you. They can still do like lots of disgusting things. They can still item lock you for sure with Distort. They can still use Dominating Echo to prevent you from playing stadiums and special energies. It's disgusting. Like, even if you have those two, then, like, sure, you're immune from the Dragapult effects. But that's about it. That is about it. I'm gonna go piss real quick. That's okay with y'all. That is not what I wanted this to say. We're gonna type BRB being. There you go. Awesome. I'll be right back. Alright guys, I'm back. I am back. Loki might fire up your Wii and play Wii Sports results and chill. Why not? Yeah, why not? Did I miss anything? I was in an ad. I was peeing. So you didn't really miss much. Yeah, like Strategic pointed out. I am back now though, so we can continue with the content. Let's flip a coin to see if we go first or second. We have once again a game going first. Okay. Not bad at all. Give it a few more shuffles before we deal our opening hands. See if we can actually get like a good starting Pokemon, like Capsakid or Jirachi. You know, that'd be awesome. Bam. 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 Let's see. Dene, Lele, Jirachi, Escapeboard. Okay. Okay. We have Jirachi, Escapeboard in opener. That's pretty good. And also a Capsakid. That's like not the worst thing ever. Alright. Let's put these here. And let's start the game. We are going first, so I'll draw for turn, then I'll fix the proxy. Proxies are always a little mid. I'm sorry about that. But it's better than nothing. We are definitely attaching a Escapeboard here. We're definitely playing Old Cemetery, and we're definitely playing Random Receiver. Ultra Ball, Trainer's Mail, Basic Fire, Welder. There we go. We found the Welder. And then we will shuffle our deck. Because I think I wanted the Dene first and foremost. And yes, I just thinned out the Welder. But I am pretty sure that with this setup, we probably don't need 5 or 6 Welders. So I'm down to just thin out. Only way to actually beat Drago is to deny energy. Yeah. Which is why people play Team Flare Grunt and Plumeria and Enhanced Hammer in Expanded and Megaton Blower. That's the only way to beat it. So I don't think I'm gonna fit another supporter with Lele, so let's just then I GX discard these 3. 6 cards. One more. There we go. Or play Moon, which I would do. I mean, if you're playing Moon, you still get like Timeless GX. It's not free. Okay, cool. There's 2 Old Cemetery here. Awesome. Now let's play the Trainer's Mail first and foremost. I think I want to grab Fiery Flint out of all of these. So that I can search out our energies. Let's discard 1 Cemetery and 1 Welder. Grab 4 Fire Energies. This is our first deck search we're performing. So I will go look at prizes after this deck search. Moon kind of spanks Drago hardcore. I mean, yeah. Timeless GX with 1 Regidrago. Whenever someone says Megaton Blower, you always think of that one Chef Husky No MP3 Expanded shirt where he says Megaton fucking Blower. Star Chronos into Timeless GX. Yeah. Yeah, but that's a different deck. Star Chronos into Timeless GX is a different deck. You made a live deck with that, yeah. I did make a trumpet deck with that recently. Okay, so we're just holding on to this. I do want to Stellar Wish before we do anything else. Another Fiery Flint, no thank you. I think I will grab the Seeker. Jirachi is EP. Metal Transfer Bronzong, yep baby. Only way to do it. You do Timeless GX into Star Chronos, into Metal Rain from Bronzong Break. Unless you play Scramble, but that's lame. Yeah, no, Scramble is lame. You're right. Alright, we got the VS Seeker. Don't want to retreat into Capsicum necessarily, so let's just pass for now. Our opponent's now having their turn 1 going second. Let's assume that they don't have an answer to Jirachi. So, we bench another Capsicum. I mean, it's pretty likely they have Stadium Bump, so I guess I will do that. Welder to take it. Takes 40 and we draw 3. Find Sealstone. I find Scovillain, that's big. Since Metal Rain with Cyrus Star is very funny. Oh yeah, it is very funny. Anyway, good night probably. I'm gonna get 999 points on Wii Sports Resort Table Tennis Return Challenge to become the ultimate GOAT. Hell yeah. Good luck on that. Good luck on that. Yeah, let's also go for a Stellar Wish. Don't really need Fiery Flint at this point. Random Receiver is nice. I think I'll grab Ultra Ball just to be safe, so that we actually have a Scovillain for... I have an Ultra Ball. Okay, never mind. I don't need to grab Ultra Ball. I can just go Random Receiver. And then... yeah, go look for the random supporter. Scovillain. There it is. Welder. Alright. Hello, Do. Why did I not see your message? Why did I only see it now? It was sent 2 minutes ago. Sorry for not responding. Hope you're still here. Hi, Do. It is a Noah. How are you doing? Alright. Yeah. Welder gets. So for now, it's probably wise to not attach return. Probably best to just retreat with Jirachi into the Scovillain and just smack them for 10 plus 70 per damage counter. So 10 plus 70 times 4 is 290 damage. Likely picks up 2 prizes. So yeah. So we get Quick Ball and Fire Energy. I'm assuming in between turns this fucking dies. So let's go ahead and discard this all. And push Jirachi and draw for our next turn. We have a lot of tools in our hands. Not literal tools, but like ways to do stuff. I think it's best if we Welder to Capsake it first. So we can draw 3 off of that. We draw into Scovillain naturally, so no need to Ultra Ball. That's awesome. I think I will Quick Ball away this Fire Energy to grab another Capsake it. What else is wise to do here? It's probably best to just start spinning here with Trainer's Mail and Stellar Wish, so let's do that. So tragic that Block Lex exists. Why is it so tragic? I love that card. I love that card. Forbidden Light Gumi is top tier deck. Oh yeah, I love Forbidden Light Gumi. It's so fun. Such a fun card. Alright, let's go for a Stellar Wish. I'll just grab the Random Receiver and then start random receiving all over the place. Is there even a Welder left in my deck? I didn't really count, if I'm gonna be honest. If there's no Welder left, this is kind of a stupid move. There's no Welder left in my deck. Whoopsie daisy. That was not a smart random receiver. I'll tell you that. That was not very smart. People still play it? Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, yeah. You just don't see it very often. Also, the sad part about Goomy is that it has like no HP. Yeah, let's Trainer's Mail to see what we get off of that potentially. Rescue Stretcher, interesting. Do we want to Fiery Flint here? Let me think. How many fires in discard? 1, 2, 3. 3 total. So Fiery Flint can grab 2 energy. No, 1, because I have 1 in hand. The Fiery Flint is like not worth it at all. 3 top 16 at the Legends Champions League? Hell yeah. It's actually more played than I remember. That's pretty slay. Sorry, the Jirachi is EP right now. I keep forgetting to change that. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to retreat out of it anyway. What I do want to do is Quick Ball or Crobat. Not Crobat. Yeah. Or Crobats. Oh, Crobat's prized. Right, I forgot about that. I guess I'll Quick Ball for another Jirachi. Play it just for lower retreats. I mean, yeah, I could see that, actually. I could see that for sure. Let's see. I wanted to use this for Sealstone, but guess we can't. Let's retreat into the Scove. Swing with Spicy Rage. There's the Crobat. And then we get fucking nuked here again. Of course, opponents have 2 prizes, but so are we. Let's draw for turn. Yo, escape board, let's go. Hell yeah. Let's Ultra Ball away to Dene. And Ultra Ball for that Scovillain. Shuffle the deck. See no plus over block likes other than retreat costs. Yeah, I see what you mean. It is very hype. Goomy is such a cute Pokemon. I love Goomy. Alright, it's pretty likely that we hit a Fire Crystal in the meantime, but we want to play to my outs. So we're gonna play Crobat first, triggering Dark Acid to draw 3. Flint, Ultra Ball, Quick Ball. It's a little annoying. Now let's attach 4 Sealstone. And use Stellar Wish to look at the top 5. I guess we'll grab Trainer's Mail. I have Prime Catcher in hand, so I can do double Jirachi this turn if I want to. LOT Larvitar gotta be top 3 tech cards of all time. What does LOT Larvitar do again? Retreat into the other Jirachi. And use this Jirachi Stellar Wish. Let's grab Random Receiver because it fins a card out of my deck. 9 top 4s, 2 wins along with a billion top 16. I don't think I remember what that card does. What does that do again? There's still a Welder in deck, right? Why am I stupid like this? I should have grabbed the Ultra Ball and not this. I'm so stupid, bro. I don't think it matters. Wait, hold on. We want to fin as much as we can, so... Quick Ball, the Fiery Flint. Or Radzard, I guess. Capsicate is better to grab here. Yeah. And then we Ultra Ball away Capsicate and Trainer's Mail. for the Radzards. Then we Prime Catcher into the Scovillain. We V-Star for Fire Crystal. I mean, we don't have to show our opponent, of course, but 2 colorless, 10 damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon has 3 or more damage counters on it, this attack does 70 more damage. So it does 80 for 2 colorless. Interesting. It's not even just an ability deck, it's an attacker, which is even more hype. That's crazy. I'm assuming this was an attacker back when it was printed, because these days, that shit would not fly. That would be so bad. Okay, let's VS Seeker for Welder. Let's Fire Crystal for 3 fires. Let's Welder for 2. Putting 40 on this. Drawing 3 cards. Of which 2 are fucking Fiery Flint. Yeah, and if we want to, we can even bench Radzard, attach here for turn. And it is technically a working attacker. But we can just swing with this for the KO. And if we, like, technically what we could have done is attach here and put this to 6. But yeah, the 2 Fire Crystals there made this game a little more interesting than I would like to admit. Alright. It has not anything since 2019. That's crazy. That it was played in still played in 2019. Like, that's insane, actually. Alright. Played in a bunch of decks too. Interesting. I'm assuming it was just played in most decks that ran DCE, right? As a niche single prize attacker. Or was it specifically played in decks that place damage counters? Alright, let's flip another coin. That's heads again. So once again, going first in this game. 5, 7. Alright, let's see what our opening hand is. The Dene Forced Opener. Okay. Great. Let's put down 6 prizes and flip that active. Let's go. Draw for turn. We have 2 goddamn random receivers. Let's see. Mail. There's Welder number 1. I'll just keep going. Mail, Cemetery, Fire, Capsicate, Dene, Fiery Flint. There's Welder number 2. Alright. And I'll play Lele to get Welder number 3. This is a deck search now, so we can actually... Wow, price 2 Scovillain. At this point, I'm happy that I play 4/4 line. Weezing, Zorok Dugong, Ridiculous Hoopa, Coco Spread, Carbo Toad, Nella Martina, and even a couple Decidueye Ninetales decks. Yeah, those are all technically decks that are good at placing damage counters or spread. So that makes sense. Yeah, let's look for the third Welder. There it is. And a result in Lycanroc Persian. Okay, that's like the one deck that's not necessarily spread. Got a top 16 every single one of those decks other than Carbo Toad. That is actually kind of crazy, yeah. For just a little common shitter, that's actually kind of nutty. To be fair, a lot of basics had like less than 110 HP, so it makes sense. Makes sense. The single price basics mostly. Right, so we got Tree Welder in hand. We also got nothing else. Let's play the Trainer's Mail. I literally get 0 hits out of the Trainer's Mail. That's crazy. Let's Ultra Ball away. Welder Fire Energy. I have 3 cards in hand now. Do we want Capsicid or Crobats? I think I need more. I need Crobats. Don't want to discard all this, so we'll grab Crobats. Oh, it's Zorok, you're dumb. What? This was a Zorok check. Really? Oh, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah. Yeah, that actually... Yeah, no, you're right. That actually does make a lot of sense. It just... Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I also couldn't think of the weakness mon they were aiming for. But it makes sense that it is Zorok. 1, 2, 3. What the fuck is this draw, bro? What am I witnessing? I'll just do a scoop and go next. Like, this is not happening. Let's just do a scoop and go next. It's been a while since this happened. You have to look through a few lists. Yeah. No, I understand. I understand. I also had the same issue. I think what mostly caused the disconnect in my brain is that Zorark in Standard is weak to grass and not to fighting. So I think that's what mostly caused the disconnect in my brain. But I think you had like a similar vein you were going down probably. Literally though, yeah. We're not dumb. We're just not used to the format. That's exactly what you were thinking, yeah. I even ordered Zork Jax recently, so it's very funny that I didn't even think of this. Let's just do another going first game, because that last game was a non-game. I don't remember that being a Pikarom counter. Yeah, exactly. We were kind of on similar tracks here. Bop. Bop. Draw for turn. That's another Capsicid. That's very hype. Trainer's Mail. Random receiver is Poggers AF. Let's play the random receiver immediately. Boop, 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 boop. Come on. There's the welder. Thank you. Jesus Christ. Random receiver is a little ridiculous from time to time. You just low-key be revealing half of your deck. You would still need 50 damage on Zork to one-shot, which is why it's in spread, yeah. It's all working out in your head now. Like, getting 50 on Zork is not that difficult with a spread list. For sure. And yeah, Zork was indeed, like, everywhere. So it makes sense. Okay, we get Welder. Now we have 2 Welders in hand. Trainer's Mail again. And we're forced to grab VS Seeker. Okay. Was it going first game I mentioned? So I think what my best bet is here is to pass. I mean, shit, it's all over now. Yeah, it's been over for a long time. It's been over for a long time. Or is that not what you were referencing? You might be talking about something else. I'm unsure. Let me just check how long it takes for next ad to play. 28 minutes. I think I can finish the game before that. Everything with trade or trade adjacent has been in every deck of all time. Yeah. What am I doing? I meant to pass and go to the next turn. Yeah, that's what I meant to be doing. Fiery Flints. Welder Ultra Ball. 4 fire energies. There's the rest. There's number 3. There's number 4. Number 4. Burger King foot lettuce. Sorry. Curly I was in a couple early Dingo lists. Oh yeah. Curly I was in a lot of lists. Curly I was also in a United Wings list, which is really funny. I think you saw Sword and Shield base, since you know just about everything. Yeah. And to be fair, like Trait Lightbart also saw a little bit of play after. Actually, no. Not, well, it saw a little bit of play before SIT Curly released. After that, not really. Alright. Now let's welder. Wait. I mean, I can welder. We don't have cemetery. I mean, I still think I have to welder here. The draw tree. And let's random receiver. Hope we hit cemetery off the thing. Trainer's mill. Just a welder. We thought Guardy was cooked after rotation. Yeah, that was so funny. Dude, so many people thought that Guardy was cooked after rotation. I'm like, wait a second. Don't say that. We said Guardy was cooked after the rotation of E-Block. But then I said, hey, Guardy still has a lot of tools. Monkey Door is really strong. We don't need Brainstorm Gardevoir. And the same thing happened when F-Block rotated. And we're like, oh, Guardy's cooked because Kirlia is rotating. No, it's not cooked. Right, Trainer's Mail. That is not an old cemetery, unfortunately. I think I have to grab the quick ball here. And quick ball for Jirachi? Question mark. Robat doesn't really work here. I think it has to be Jirachi. I've already cooked this rotation for real this time. Yeah. Yeah. Truly for real, because Guardy actually rotates. I mean, we still have Mega Guardy, but I truly don't think Mega Guardy is, like, it might still be like a solid deck, but I don't think it's as good as Gardevoir EX has been. I think it's like a solid tier 3 deck, potentially. Okay. Now let's see. Let's attach, return, and retreat into the Jirachi. Stellar Wish. Dude, there's the cemetery. Do I just grab the cemetery now? I think I do. I think I don't grab the escape boards. This deck does so much shuffling, man. It's not okay. It better stay fake. I don't want to see that line in a single series deck for the next 2 years at least. Oh boy. You might not want to play Expanded. Gardevoir is still like somewhat relevant there. It's Gardevoir Mill, so it's definitely different, but play the cemetery. Actually, no, hold the cemetery. What am I doing? Yeah, pass here. Let them KO the Jirachi. Push this Capsakid and draw for turn. Evolve into Scovillain. Wait. I'm not doing this correctly, am I? I have one fire energy. So I think we definitely hold cemetery. I have 2 Scovillans, so let's evolve this one for sure. I have Prime Catcher, so what I can do is I can welder 1 fire here, make this take 20. They draw 3. There's Crobats. Let's Scovillain Rhyme Catcher into a target that has 150 HP. Probably going to be single prizer, unfortunately, a target with 150 HP. Crobats for 3. 3 prizes are lame in this new format blows. You don't play this. You don't play Expanded. You don't play this game very much, period. Yeah, that's fair. Attach 4 Sealstone here. Let's Trainer's Mail. Oh, Random Receiver. Do I want Random Receiver or Fiery Flint? I want Fiery Flints. Because I already have a welder option in hand with VS Secret. 1, 2, yeah, 2. Okay. I want to play this Fiery Flint just yet. Let's just shuffle. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And swing for 150 for 1 prize. Another welder, Jesus Christ. Okay. And turn goes over. This probably fucking dies. So our opponent's at 4 prizes. No, 3 actually. Because Jirachi perished. And then we draw for turn. We don't need another Capsakid, I think. We can Fiery Flint away, Capsakid and Cemetery. Find some more fire energies. I think there's still 2 left in deck. There's 0 left in deck. That is a big yikes. In that case, let's force Sealstone for a Fire Crystal. Right before Mega Evo, you got a list you were happy with, and then all your matchups went to shit. Oh, the Raging Bolt list with Water Pond. Was that the one that you mentioned? The one that you meant? The Raging Bolt list with Water Pond. Let's Fire Crystal. 3 Fire Energy back. Let's Welder to get 2 Fire Energy here. 40 damage. Draw 3 cards. That's 2. 3. Well, this is Scovillain. This is a dead card now in my hands. Do I attach return there? Probably not. Let's swing for 2 prizes. Okay. This probably dies. My opponent goes to 1 prize. Yeah, that means my best bet is just swinging with this and hoping my opponent doesn't hit. Okay. I did get the fire from prizes, which is really nice. Random Receiver. I think there's still a welder in my deck. Yeah, that list rocks. Gotta get lunch, be back in 10. Okay, I think I'm not gonna be here for 10 more minutes, but I think you've already left. I don't think you can hear me anymore. Yeah, there's no welder in deck anymore. That's a little... Alright. Let's VS Seeker for welder then. That works out for me. Play the welder to attach 1, 2 energy, and draw 1, 2, 3 cards. There is a Jirachi here. There's also a Fire Crystal. That's not gonna matter too much, I think. 1, 2, 3. I mean, what's gonna matter for this one is that we can attach an extra 1 for turn and push that to 6 damage doing. What Pokemon are in my discard pile? Let me check. It's a 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2, 3-2 Lion plus a Jirachi, and that's it. Okay. So let's swing for 2 prizes. Yeah. Let's say they gust my Crobat. I don't know, man. At this point, it doesn't really matter. I want to see if I can like power up Radzard here. Potentially. There's no more Welder in deck. So I don't think I can do that. Okay, so imagine if Jirachi was here, inactive. We could skateboard Stellar Wish. I don't even know if Zard is in deck, but I'll try my darndest. Zard is in deck. Alright. We can play Zard. If we want to, we can attach the fire. So it can actually swing. But at this point, Scovillain does more damage, so it doesn't really make sense. Better to manually attach here. And do how much damage? 8 times 70 is 560. It's 570 damage. Yeah, that's kind of nutty. But this is of course never gonna happen because our opponent was on Rowan Prize last turn and they would just knock out a single prizer, probably. So yeah, the last prize was indeed the energy. There's still a VS Seeker in deck, right? What were my odds of hitting that? Not great. My odds were not awesome, let's be honest. Here we go. Let's just shuffle the list again. Right, I love this song so much. I think I'm gonna have to say goodbye to y'all for now. I'll probably post a message tomorrow regarding, either tomorrow or tonight, regarding this weekend's Pokémon match. So stay tuned for that. If you want to join the Discord, type !PCM Discords. And if you're too lazy to type, I will type it momentarily. Just give me a sec, because I want to prep this by looking cute. There we go. So that we start right, or that we end right where we started. Let me just roll back to my PC. I'm saying PC as if this is an expensive machine. This is like a laptop that's like 7 years old. Okay. But in case you're curious, feel free to join the Discord. If you want more information on Pokémon, you can find it there, or you can type !PCM. Both of those work. There's lots of information about this. And if you're curious, very curious about specific rules, you can type !PCMrules. I just noticed I'm typing this only in the Twitch chat, but you can type this in whatever chat you want, and it will still work. I'm just going to copy the rate message for now, and I'm going to turn off the music so I can listen in on
That is so cool. That is kind of a good break. Do you have any plans for your break, Kevin? I'm so excited for you. Enjoy your break. Since when did I pass a 50 baguettes? No wonder you were on my recap. Ninja, thank you so much. Thank you for getting your baguettes. Oh my god.
I'll see you guys next Saturday.
Post game Final Fantasy Tactics content. That is so true.